Good evening, everybody. Well, we all know why we're here. We lost one of the greats. So we're going to do we're going to say a few words, and some people are going to play some music for you. And there's two videos, montages we'll show you, and a moment of silence, and kind of segue into the rest of the evening. All right, how about now? I'll keep it up. So in any event, what we're going to do is start off. Stephen's father would like to say a few words. So would you please welcome Mr. Perry?
I don't really deserve this. People keep telling me Steve got his music from me. That's bullshit. He had it from himself. I so much appreciate all you folks turning out. And I especially wanted to thank Leighton, the prime mover in this whole operation. And a very large covey of volunteers that helped him make it happen. I don't have much to say except a few days back I was going through Stephen's papers. I came to a short thing he had written, and I wanted to read it. He said, "I believe we can measure our success by the people that show up around us. If this is true, I am a wealthy man, wealthy in friends and love. I chose to follow my dream and was fortunate enough to be able to do so. I also know others who've had a more difficult life, and that reminds me of just how good life is for me. Gratitude. The safest place to live is when my life is challenged." Thank you.
All through the end, there was one person who was with Stephen all the time. And that man was his companion, his significant other, Sid.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for being in Stephen's life, and let's get on with this. This is a great show.
We grew up in Concord, Massachusetts. A lot of friendly people from Concord here. It was a great place to grow up. Wonderful place. Lindsay? Lindsay, you ready to read from Gil Marley? Here we go. In Concord, we had a place called The Place, and it was where we all hung out. And one of the guys who ran the place is a fellow by the name of Gil Marley. Great guy. He lives in California now. He spoke with Stephen right at the end. And he asked to have something read, and one of our classmates from Concord, Lindsey Brown, is going to read that for us.
To my dear friend Stephen Paul.
On the mic, honey. A little bit lower, maybe.
I'm sure we've all had moments in our lives that seemed of little consequence, but which later proved to be life-changing. I can barely see this. Are the lights maybe brighter? More lights? Okay, I think I'm ready. Such was that nondescript day in Concord, Massachusetts, when, as I approached Howard Johnson's, I felt a sudden urge for a cup of coffee. I made my way to the counter, lost in my own thoughts, sat down staring at the countertop. I was startled by a wave of energy that impacted me from behind the counter. I looked up. The first words out of my mouth were, "Who are you?" The bright-eyed, energetic young man responded, "My name is Stephen Paul Perry, and I am a musician. I have my own group. It's called Wilderness." He enthusiastically described the group and its activities. At the time, I was something of an intellectual snob whose only musical interest was classical. However, I got caught up in my energetic descriptions and wanted to know more. This was a turning point in my life. I attended Stephen's concerts in and around the Boston area, and my enthusiasm for his contemporary music grew. As a later consequence, I could be found sitting cross-legged on bare wood floor listening to Led Zeppelin or in a crowded smoke-filled theater. You know what kind of smoke, right? Listening to the Grateful Dead and so many other popular groups. As Stephen's career grew, I saw less of him until he returned to Concord and visited me in my home. It was during these visits that he shared so much more of himself. I learned Stephen was a spiritual being, and it was this aspect of him that was expressed through his music. Later, after Stephen became ill, we had more frequent conversations of encouragement, now by telephone. I recall one conversation we had while he was in the recovery room following surgery. He had difficulty talking, so I told him just to hold the phone and listen, which he did. In other occasions, I would call him from the pier in San Clemente, California, my home for the past 20 years. I would walk to the end, and amid the sounds of the waves and the calls of the seabirds, we would have in-depth discussions, sharing our spiritual beliefs. We both believed in life after death, in life on earth, and in the spirit world. We didn't believe in coincidence, and felt our lives were directed. My last conversation with Stephen was the day before he died. I first talked with Sid, his partner, who described his condition. Stephen was sleeping, and I agreed to call back in 2 hours. I called Sid and had set Stephen up with headphones. He was not able to talk, but he made verbal noises of acknowledgement. I told Stephen to let go and to let God take him. I told him he had suffered enough, that death is not an end, just a transition. I told him I would be a supportive friend to Sid. I promised to stay in touch. That night, I dreamed I had gone to visit him, and had again urged him to let go and let God take over. I dreamed I gave him a single white rose as a symbol of my love for him. The following day, while shopping for food, as I approached the checkout, I received a phone call from my dear friend Irene, telling me Stephen had died. I thanked her and told her I thought it was a good thing he ended the call. My mind, nevertheless, was in turmoil, as the checkout person greeted me with, "Are you, and how are you today?" I briefly explained I just received the news of a close friend had died, and added that I thought it was a good thing that he had suffered enough. As I was leaving the store, I was called back. "These are for you," and said they handed me a bouquet of white roses. Coincidence? I think not. Stephen's influence on the youth of Concord was profound. His enthusiasm for life and for music was infectious. During the days of Wilderness, young people worked together, strumming guitars, beating on drums in their effort to emulate him, and they're still doing it. Later, he continued to nurture young musicians throughout his recording studio. Stephen's life and music will be indelibly imprinted in the minds of his grateful followers in many years to come. God bless you, Stephen, my dear friend. Gil.